In this session, we will dive into rapid digital technologies, transformation reshaping global trade and logistics. Leading this discussion will be Mr. Sandun Hapagoda, country manager of MasterCard Sri Lanka and Maldives. With his deep knowledge of digital payments and technology integration, Mr. Hapagoda is well positioned to steer this dialogue. Let's extend our appreciation to him. Joining our moderator, we have our panelists. Starting off, we have Mr. Abhijit, who has spent close to 30 years of experience in IT, in services, and as well as an end user. He has worked extensively in the field of travel and transportation with a focus on aviation, ports, logistics, and hospitality. Mr. Abhijit presently works as an advisor to the CEO of Portal Info Systems Private Limited, an agency that has the mandate to implement the National Logistics Portal in India. Next, we have a well-known ICT industry veteran, Mr. Channa De Silva, who took reins as the Chief Executive Officer of Lanka Pay in December 2015. Mr. De Silva has been instrumental in driving of the innovative payment solutions introduced by the company, such as driving digital payments. And lastly, our panelist is Mr. Roshan, the Vice President of Smart Building at Millennium IT, ESP, and a prominent figure in the IT-driven innovations for critical infrastructure. With over 20 years of experience across various sectors, Mr. Roshan is known for spearheading transformative projects in smart buildings and factory solutions. Mr. Sandun, this session is all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you, Rohan and the team, for inviting us here. Before we get into the panel discussion, I thought we'll set a context between myself and Abhijit. So before we get into the panel discussion, let me talk about a little bit about MasterCard. We are one of the oldest payment networks in the country. We started our business in 1989. We are celebrating our 35th year. Typically, as a payment network, we've been working with banks, but now we've evolved ourselves into a technology company. We don't call ourselves a payment company anymore. And now we've expanded our engagements beyond typical banking customers, like we engage with SMEs, MSMEs, merchants, large enterprises, fintechs, and most importantly, we are engaging with the governments and government-related entities. I want to set the context with a little bit on the evolution of e-commerce. This is an AI-generated picture, so don't kill me for this. Now, we used to have commerce, right, where we order something, call somebody, send a letter to somebody to deliver something, and then we pay cash at the time of the delivery. And then comes the e-commerce, and then later came the mobile commerce, where you get into a website or a mobile application, and then order something, or order an item, or order a service, and then that's being delivered to you. Takes a couple of days. Right? And then today we have come to an era where it's all about quick commerce. Literally, you can start cooking and then order your eggs. And it's delivered to your doorstep within 15 minutes time. So quick commerce is taking over the world, and some of the best examples would be in India. The logistics for quick commerce is developed so much. Even there are regional quick commerce players where you can order something and that's being delivered to you within 15 minutes time. So this whole evolution, I would say, the logistics, it's all thanks to logistics, because improvement of logistics is what empowers the quick commerce, so the evolution of the whole thing from commerce to quick commerce. So it's about science of getting the right product to the right place, the right time, the right condition, at the right cost. So we'll talk about that later. Then I want to give a little bit of a glimpse in terms of how the e-commerce revenues are changing in the country. So we've currently little over $2 billion revenue that makes through the industry, but we have really ambitious projections for Sri Lanka. But if you look at the right corner, where you can see the split between the offline versus online. So offline is about 96.3% as of now, where online commerce is about 3.7%. And this is something that we can improve significantly, get a better consumer experience, and I think logistics play a huge role in growing this. And this is a glimpse in terms of how the distribution is for different sectors. Moving forward, we are looking at a 5.5% compound annual growth rate for the sector for the next 10 years. We know statistically about 90% of things that we get delivered or whatever you order is delivered through the sea means. And then we have the engagements. So when you order something, when you have a consignment coming in, the statistics says the shipper or the owner engages with different parties at least 28 times, right? And this is where some of the areas where you have to consider. I will talk that in a little later. How the data security is important, because if your data of a specific consignment is with 28 parties or less, your data can be vulnerable. So how you secure your data is something that I will discuss later. And we've seen half of the global business transactions are still manual, right? And even the payments are pretty much paper-based. So this is where some of the solutions of automating your payments through digital means, virtual cards, etc., can play a major role, where MasterCard play a major role globally. Moving forward, this is a white paper. Don't worry, there's a lot of text. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But this is a white paper that MasterCard has done some time back, which covers 4 main areas. This is a white paper that we have published in 2022. I would encourage you to go to internet and search for this white paper and read through it. Not now, maybe after my session. But it covers 4 main areas, including digitization of port ecosystems, improving invoice accuracy, reduction of disputes, then embedding payments and financing into workflow automation, and also how data-driven insights can optimize your outcomes and how you can improve your efficiency. So please read this 2022 white paper whenever you have time. I wanted to put out some of the examples, actually 2 examples, to show you how on the payment side we can globally work with different players. So this is an example of what we have done this year to enable the acceptance of payments. So we worked with PairPoint platform to integrate with our payment gateway to accept multiple modes of transactions. So this is one of the examples we show to say that how global technologies can be used to automate your payment collections. This is an example of a partnership that MasterCard has with DP World to showcase how we can automate the payments. So early example is collecting payments. This example is about making payments. So in this example, we empower stakeholders, SMEs, etc., to make payments seamlessly to stakeholders involved in logistics ecosystem. Moving forward, I want to talk a little bit on threat protection. Even though our topic covers a lot of things, 5G, cyber crimes, port technologies, and multiple other things, which itself could be, like each topic could be a single conference itself. So I would like to cover the threat protection area. Globally, statistically, we see average cost of a data breach as per last year is about $4.5 million. And to make it worse, it takes, as an average, about 277 days to recover from a data breach. So to fix the data breach and to identify it and fix the whole thing, as an average globally, you've seen it's 277 days. And only one of 3 companies globally can figure out the data breaches by themselves. So which means that the corporates needs a lot of external support to ensure their systems are secure. And in terms of challenges, when it comes to security, obviously you'll have financial losses. And for small companies, we see an average of $3.3 million. And for larger enterprises, we see an average of $5.4 million for each data breach in terms of financial loss. We don't have to say how much of a reputational loss that you will have if you have a data breach, because all your customers will get to know that their data is breached. And we have seen like 52% of breaches in 2023 involved in some form of customer or personal identifiable information leaked out. Also, operational disruptions. So as an example, 25% of destructive attacks left organization systems inoperable. So I'll talk about DDoS attacks, etc. later. And what we have seen is these fraudsters have become super sophisticated. They've tried to become smarter than us. I would like to believe we are a little smarter than them. That's why we are preventing. And we can, between Chan and myself, we'll talk about on the payment side, how we are trying to attack these system attacks. But they are coming up with sophisticated attacks every day. We call them APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats, where they figure out multiple ways to get into your data and get into your servers. I would like to talk about, this is just theory, but I'll just skip through the slides. One is the DDoS attacks. So if you have a sophisticated IT system, and if somebody doesn't like you, they could send you so many requests to your system, and your system would be vulnerable to actually cater to a genuine request. So that's called a DDoS attack, where you get multiple requests or millions of requests from multiple sources at the same time, and your systems would not be able to cater to genuine requests, and you would not be able to service your customers. You would not be able to service your genuine customers. The other thing that we have seen is web application attacks. So if you have a website that is front-ending for your customers, and if that website is not up to date, that is going to be a problem. And that could be a backdoor for the hackers and all the fraudsters to get into your servers or plant malware into your website, or the man in the middle. We call them man in the middle attacks, and we can discuss about that later. Third one is the bot attacks, and you all, in a way, we all use bots in different scales. All of you use ChatGPT, etc. If you call ChatGPT a bot. But there are good bots and bad bots. So good bots can be used for your business growth, like customer services, customer servicing, pricing calculations, etc. You can use bots. But also there are bad bots implanted by bad people, and that could be spams, man in the middle, etc., who will take your data out and transmit to somebody else. I want to talk about phishing attacks, even though we have multiple type of attacks. This example is pretty much relating to logistics. This is an example from Singapore Post, where we had some bad guy created a website similar to the Singapore Post, and then they sent a message to everybody to get into that website. This year in Sri Lanka, we faced this twice. If you have gotten this SMS saying that you've gotten a parcel from somewhere, and to click on a link, and it took you to a Sri Lanka Post website, that's absolutely a phishing website. And so many people in Sri Lanka, we hear, especially from our issuing bank, they have put their credentials. And what happens is, you get a, let's say you order something online, and you're waiting for that thing to be arrived. And the same time, you get a SMS saying there is a parcel to be received, but you have to pay something to Sri Lanka Post. Let's say you have to pay 1,500 rupees, it says on the text. So you click on that link. It takes you to a page which is similar to Sri Lanka Post, and you enter your card details. And instead of 1,500 rupees, it initiates a transaction for $1,500. And you get an OTP from the bank, and generally you don't read that SMS, you only look at the OTP. And you put the OTP also and initiate the transaction. What you don't know is somebody in the back end, they're taking your card details, they're taking the OTP, and they are initiating something we call fully authenticated fraud, right? So fully authenticated fraud is the term. Even though we have security mechanisms, if our customers are negligible, it's very, very difficult to protect them. So this is something that we wanted to share with you, but there are other sophisticated type of attacks also that we see. So in terms of protecting your environment, so it doesn't matter whether you're in payments industry or manufacturing, fintech, healthcare, insurance, or whether you're the government. It's super important that you make sure that your infrastructure is secure. Now, to give an example, let's say you handle your freight data and you have somebody outsourced who would be giving you a certain kind of a service. And if you're sharing your data with them, and even if you make your internal system super sophisticated and secure, if your data is parked with somebody else, you would not be able to, you'll be still vulnerable, right? Now, we're working with multiple players in Sri Lanka. As an example, Sri Lankan Airlines today uses one of our services to make sure that all the supplier systems are secure. So what happens is, if you're sharing data with a supplier, you have to first check whether their systems are secure, and then tell them that these are the fixes that you need to do to your system before I share my data with you. And then once they're fixed, you can share with them the severities and what needs to be fixed fast, and then share your data later. We can discuss about this also a little later. We are working with LankaPay as an example together. LankaPay and MasterCard, we work to ensure the financial system is secure through the FinCert. The vulnerabilities of the financial ecosystem, especially banks, we are using the same system in a different use case for sure. So my last slide, whether you're using AI for your operation, I'm sure you all are using AI in some form. Not sure whether everybody is using ChatGPT, etc. But I'm sure you are using your email, you are using your Apple phones, Android phones at least, or you're using Google Maps or anything like that. And all of those solutions are today using AI. But the same capabilities you can use for your business in two different ways. One is to reduce frauds, tackle your issues that you have, and also to improve your efficiency in your ecosystem. So we talk about frauds and some of the stopping fraudulent transactions by using AI. So as an example, at MasterCard, we process about 500 million transactions a day. Statistically speaking, it's about 5,600 transactions every second, which means even before you say 5,600, we have processed another 5,600 transactions, right? So what we do is every transaction that we process, we consider the location of the transaction, merchant of the transaction, issue of the transaction, customer's previous history, the device that they use, and multiple other data points, and put a score from 1 to 999 for that particular transaction, depending on the risk of that particular transaction. and issuers can take a decision based on that particular score. So we are using AI to do this scoring. So when you say transaction security, a lot of people think it's blocking transactions, but it's not only blocking transactions, but also enhancing the customer experience by not blocking fraud, false fraudulent transaction. As an example, if you have a genuine customer transaction, and if your bank is blocking that transaction, by using AI, we can prevent that as well. So as an example, at MasterCard, we have actually allowed 8 billion additional transactions to be processed, otherwise, which otherwise they would have blocked those transactions by using some of the fraud mechanism. So I'll stop there, and I'll hand it over to Abhijit to talk about the port infrastructure, and then we'll get into the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandun. We have been tasked, we have the task of keeping everybody awake. So I will do my best to make it a little short, sweet, so that we can talk more. Before I start on this, why don't I start with a short story to set the perspective? So let's put it this way. Two CEOs were hired in two ports, and both of them, of course, wanted to make a mark. And one decided to go with a focus on people and processes, the other with process and technology. So each one had his own priorities. Things went great for a while. Things started picking up. But over time, both of them realized that they were hitting a ceiling where efficiency, scalability, customer delight, all these three things at the same time was not happening. So neither of them could achieve any of these three. Essentially, what was happening is that at the end of the day, the story only goes to show that a good mix of people, process, and technology is required. What I'm showing here does not mean all of us have to do all these things, but a good mix of technology is absolutely essential for people and process to happen seamlessly. So with that, I will start. Okay. So the first thing is I just want to give the logistics cost of India as a percentage of GDP. There are many ways of calculating the logistics cost, but I think in our case we have taken GDP. We used to think, by the way, that our logistics cost is very high, but in 21-22, NCAER conducted a study, and they found that as a percentage of GDP, it's about 7.8 to 8.9. That's the range in which India's GDP falls. I'm sorry, the logistics cost falls. The reason why it was higher earlier is because there was no benchmark before that. And this was just maybe an unscientific way of calculating this cost. Okay. Okay. So some of the reasons why the logistics costs are high, there are quite a few, but we will touch on some of them. One is the operating cost, whether there are non-standardized operations, whether they are manpower intensive, there's the cost of labor involved. There is a tremendous fragmentation of services. Each one of them adds to the cost of operations. The second is the environment side of it, where you have a carbon footprint, emissions, paper-based transactions. The third is lack of digitization and digitalization, both. I have not written digitalization, but digitalization also plays a big role in that. It reduces efficiency, it increases the paperwork, there is definitely a lot of human-induced errors in the processes. All of that leads to a high indirect cost, because of which there could be loss of work due to accidents, cost of security incidents, human errors. There's a multiplicity of these factors that go in increasing these costs. So is automation the answer? Yes, automation is one of the key proponents of doing some of these things. We start with the short history of automation in ports. So we earlier had mechanical ports. We moved to container ports. So post which there were EDI ports, internet ports, and then a smart port. So smart ports are now coming into play, but these are all evolving technologies. What did I do? Okay. So what is a smart port? On the left-hand side of the screen, if you can see, these are all the stakeholders in a port environment. And this is a limited list, but these can, so in the Indian context, if I have to put it, there are at least 28 to 29 stakeholders that are part of, these are identified, of course there are many unidentified ones, that form part of this, what can I say, the ecosystem. How do you manage all of these? We go into ease of doing business parameters, productivity, traffic, impact to surroundings, those kinds of, if you have those high-level heads, then you're looking at port community systems for improving your ease of doing business, single window systems, which is the customs, X-ray scanning, biometric. If you even take the port community system, which we implemented in India, which is now moved to a national logistics portal, Marine, I think Ravi was mentioning that earlier, the national logistics portal. Even there are now so many single window systems that it is not funny. There is a custom single window, there is a trade single window, there is a port single window. It is becoming a little difficult now, but yes, this is one way of reducing that complexity. On the productivity side, you could have smart cargo handling systems, equipment management, gate management. Another important part, gate management. Safety management. On the optimized traffic side, you could have a truck appointment system. Again, it is linked to the gate management part of it, or the traffic management systems. In terms of surroundings, you have to maintain asset health, energy and environment. There are many initiatives around that as well. So these together make a smart port happen. These are some of the areas, the themes, while we invest in technology. There are three main heads: productivity and efficiency, environment, safety and security. So if you look at productivity, you're looking at reducing transaction. So these are all the outcomes, or the desired outcomes. Reducing the transaction time, reducing human errors, real-time updates, business predictions, resource and cost management. So there are some examples. I will try and show some of these examples later. On the environment side, we have emissions management, electrification using renewable energy, greenhouse gas measurement, those kinds of things. So smart lighting is one way of looking at it. The third one is safety and security, where you have perimeter security, headcount management, movement of traffic, movement of people, whether there have been any breaches in protocol, those kinds of systems. So now, basis some of these, I have just thrown in some examples. So there is automated mooring systems where you have, human, without human intervention, you can have ships moor berthside. There are many advantages, but like I said earlier, one has to be diligent about how much technology you want to get into the ports. Ultimately, computers, although AI is a theme, computers cannot replace human beings at the end of the day. I beg to differ on that one. I think AI is a big hype, which I think nothing to do with MasterCard. I'm just saying AI is a big hype. Then there's automated ship-to-shore cranes, the AGVs that can, again, reduce human errors. There are so many errors. It is also a health hazard for the people who operate these cranes. So, I have seen operations where you could actually have a war room. In this scenario, you can have war room kind of controls. Sitting in their offices, they can actually do all these operations using remote control cranes. Automated yard management, I think with time, yards have become more and more complex. Earlier, they would sit in XY combination. Now it's XYZ, where you stack up containers. So reaching the right container, right time, for the right customer is always very important. Having the right truck come in at the right time with no traffic at the gate is equally important. Some of these can be managed using IoT. The backbone for all of this would be 5G kind of networks. And with all of this comes in an aspect of cyber security, because this leads to endpoint security. You're talking about backend security. You're talking about data, data at rest, data in motion, all those kinds of things. So cyber security is an extremely, becomes very crucial the more you automate. Then, of course, there are automated gates, which I linked earlier. There's video analytics, where there's motion detection, anomaly detection, trip tracking, traffic density, and you name it. There's a multiplicity of these things that can be achieved using video analytics. Another aspect that we need to consider is the compute required to do all of these things. So it's very easy to say, okay, I'll have all this technology, but analysis, storage of data, all these are expensive propositions, and the more you store, the more there are ways of getting to that data. Again, there are these other implications around cybersecurity. People tracking, we just spoke on that. Smart lighting, we have energy efficient LED lightings. Many ports are actually using, if I'm not mistaken, a way of smart lighting and smart energy. If you go to Kochi port in India, I think they are 100% green airport. All their energy comes from solar panels, all of it. They do not draw from the grid. Smart lighting plays an important role because storage of energy is expensive today. LEDs make a lot of sense. E-invoicing, I think Odex was supposed to be here, but unfortunately is not here. So, yeah, but lines like to do e-invoice. I think you guys also do e-invoicing, Kale. So, again, these are all linked together. So you have an e-invoice, you have an e-payment, and you have an electronic delivery order. These are kind of linked to each other. So unless these three aspects are what can I say, looked at, then the e-invoicing by itself doesn't help. You have to have the e-payment structure, which is where players like MasterCard will come in, Visa, whoever, and then the fintech guys, and then the delivery orders that are issued by the ports. These are some of the outcomes. Earlier I mentioned about people, process, technology. We need to have control over port emissions, saving of time and resources. Again, time and resources both have a major, the impact is due to human error and availability of those resources. Stability, ease of doing business, going to one system and not having to make any other file with any other government agency. I think that's one of the key takeaways of these kinds of systems. Port community systems help you do that. National logistics portals help you do that. We are trying to do that in India. There are challenges, and there are some good and bad points about it. So there's an ease of doing business angle. There's process automation, increase in efficiency, and then there's real-time data without manual intervention. There's, of course, statistics and predictive analysis that can always help in planning further, in planning your business. These could be some inputs to the AI algorithms. But all in all, I think at the end of the day, all ports want to ensure a better customer experience. I think all of these people, process, technologies go into ensuring that customer experience is highest. I think I'll stop here and hand it over to Sandun.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. I think between two of us, we managed to keep everybody awake, except for few. But let's try to keep the panel discussion going. We have Channa and Roshan as well joining us with us. So I'll start with Channa. Channa, talking about the technologies, including digital payments, digital signatures, which you're like heavily involved with. how do you think that it will enhance the efficiency of the global supply chain?
Yeah, I think we actually implemented this couple of, prior to COVID, seriously. The problem statement was the customs was open 24/7 with the 365 days a week. However, in order to clear a good, you had to go to a bank before 3 p.m. on a weekday because the banks were not accepting payments afterwards. So in order for somebody to clear the goods on a Sunday night, can you actually make a payment? So the bigger problem was this, what we call this e-invoicing. The physical invoices come and you make a payment. So something simple we did was, what we call electronic bill presentment. So where whichever application that you use, whether it's internet banking, mobile banking, or a fintech app, we enabled a system where automatically, bill is presented to you. Simply, for example, customs use this CUSDIC document, which has a reference number. And in your app or in your mobile banking or internet banking, you put the CUSDIC, it connects automatically to Asikuda and pulls that information and present to you, how much to pay. Because as you know, customs, depending on the time, the value changes. So you need to know at the exact amount at the exact time. So what we have provided was automatic backend. I won't call it e-invoicing, but it's a bill presentment. And then once you pay, automatically the system gets updated and it issues a receipt. And the receipt is given back to you in your app, whatever that app you use. So you can actually, take a printout, or you can just show the device and clear the goods on a Sunday, midnight. So which is one way. So that entire automated the process. Then what we realized was no point automating the payment only, because there's a ton of documents which has to be pre and post, right? And so just automating the payment doesn't help the efficiency. So in that sense, we use digital signatures where the traders could upload all their documents electronically, digitally signed for, hopefully, it will prevent manipulation and forgery. And then directly upload to Asikuda, and they can actually, figure out all the documents are in place. After that, they determine the amount to pay and they do the bill presentment. So that actually automated both sides of the equation. The only thing what we saw was for trade, international trade, customs is not the only place. There's ports, there's import-export control, there's SLSI for standards, there's inland revenue for taxation. So unless you automate this entire chain, forget just automating one department, it's not going to make things efficient. Correct. So we had to go and enable those. So we enabled payments to 8 departments, like inland revenue, customs, BOI, SLSI, import-export control department, Department of Commerce, right? So pretty much, I think the entire chain, now the payment you can make through bill presentment. Then the next phase was to digitize the documentation. So we have still not been able to penetrate into other than customs. Even customs, I think Sean is here. During COVID, they actually started using, but post-COVID, the people actually wanted to go back right. for reasons of their own, right? Which I'm not going to disclose here. But so we are struggling. But I think right. unless we conclude the entire chain, not only with customs, inland revenue, all these departments, even the document chain is automated, it won't make, so it won't, the ease of doing business won't budge unless we automate this entire chain.
For sure. Thank you, Channa. I think you made a really valuable point in terms of backward integration. Starting from payments and different other ecosystems for people to make payments, not only to make payments, but also to submit documents, etc. But I want to come to Roshan. Roshan, we spoke about the payments to customs, etc. But also when it comes to port operations, and that different countries, their digital maturity is at different levels. So with these variations, and also 5G come into play, IoT come into play, AI come into play, how do you think the port operations are going to change?
Thank you, Sadhu. Yeah, so I think first thing, I come from a company that provides technology to ports. Most of it is infrastructure technology to ports. I think in Sri Lanka today, we We work with SLPA, we are working with SAGT, CICT, and even the new Adani port. So one thing that we see as a challenge is, firstly, is availability of infrastructure and technology. Even a simple thing like in ports you will have the OT network and the IT network. IT networks are more stable. You have a technology that is evolved over time. But OT networks, which is on the yard side, which is a little different. And we have ports that have been there over time. And obviously, because the yard is a 24/7 operation, you can't go and do, you can't kind of rip the cables out of a yard and kind of have downtime. So even simple things like having a available network with 5G in a yard becomes a huge issue. For example, most yards today will depend on resilient mesh kind of Wi-Fi networks. And these are not the ideal, because once, when the containers start stacking up, these networks do tend to fail. But the newer networks that we are doing for some of the newer ports, obviously there is it's pretty much fiber networks that run completely underneath the port. So even every Wi-Fi API has a fiber network. So it's pretty stable. And you can't obviously do that with the older yards. But the difficulty Sri Lanka, we are still struggling to get a 5G network out there. Not a single service provider is able to implement a commercial Wi-Fi 5G network. So technically, if we are able to do private 5G networks, we can actually harness the power of 5G within today, we're talking about edge computing, we're talking about IoT. All of these things can be implemented if we have these fast networks, and 5G can play a big role. But sadly, we still cannot do that in Sri Lanka. So we really need to kind of get the ball rolling on that. Also, I think I want to touch on, we spoke about, I think Abhijit spoke about the port community system, and I think interoperability is key in the digital transformation. There is no point in each port having their own systems, own single windows. We need to go and look at, we need to definitely implement a port community system in Sri Lanka. And I know, I think Abhijit also participated in the RFP that was there about 3 months ago. But coming from a company like Millennium IT, one thing I'd like to, I'm sure Abhijit might not agree with me here, but where we get the Sri Lankan companies to come forward and develop these systems. Even the last RFP that came in Sri Lanka for the port community system, and sadly there is a clause that comes in most of these large RFPs in Sri Lanka. You need to have previous experience, similar projects, at least 3 or 4 similar projects. And that completely avoids local companies from participating. And sadly, I always say this very openly, today if the Colombo Stock Exchange didn't allow a company like Millennium IT to automate the stock exchange, MIT would never be there. And we're talking about 20 years ago, MIT was able to build a trading platform that even up to date is considered the fastest trading platform in the world. We were doing transactions at nanoseconds. So I think we really need to encourage local companies to come forward, build these systems, hopefully at maybe 1/3 or 1/5 of the cost, and bring in that technology, because there is enough and more local companies that can do that. I saw a very interesting infographic a couple of days ago. In the last 25 years of Sri Lanka, there is maybe only 20 tech companies that have had a meaningful exit. And you're talking about from all the way from 2002 of e-channeling to maybe 2024 of PickMe being exiting. So I think the industry itself needs to kind of motivate the local tech companies to be a part of the digital transformation.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Roshan. Talking about the port community systems, I want to shift to Abhijit. And we heard about port community system during the previous panel discussion as well. As a layman, for me to understand, what's a port community system? And I know it's tried in India. So what's the state of the India implementation? And also, can you briefly explain what are the real benefits of the port community system, Abhijit?
So let me start by saying a port community system is technically nothing but a message hub. Okay? There are multiple flavors of port community systems. There's a lean port community system or a heavy port community system. But the lean means more or less a transaction, a message hub, which allows all the stakeholders of or the participants of that system to exchange information, exchange data electronically. Okay? It reduces the need for data to be presented on, or removes actually, the need to be presented on paper or accepted on paper or have any approvals, because you could have workflows also in that. So on a very high level, a lean PCS is what would be a message hub.
Right.
The more complex you make, so you could add now, tomorrow, gate management, gate automation, traffic management. You take data from the terminal operating systems, and suddenly you are expanding the scope of the PCS and making it a more encompassing system,
Holistic
more data, more holistic. Stakeholders remain the same. Your stakeholders primarily would be customs, ports, terminals, custom handling agents, banks, card payment systems, fintechs. There's around 28, 29 participating government agencies. In the Indian context, there's about 29 odd stakeholders that we have identified, and they are all onboarded. Whether there is an uptake, like a service provider, a service receiver also needs to have the urge to say, I can do something better.
For sure.
So, of course, this battle will always continue. But in the Indian context, about 29 stakeholders have been onboarded, and they are using the system today. This system went live in 2018.
Right.
That was now upgraded to a national logistics portal that should go live pretty soon. So the PCS by itself had a focus with ports. It's a port-centric system.
Right.
The focus moved from ports to exporters and importers. So port also becomes a stakeholder in the national logistics portal.
Got it.
And people can now do, the freight forwarders or service providers can actually sit on a laptop and actually figure out their logistics activities using the platform. Where port community system, so the port itself becomes a part of that logistics chain.
Overall system.
That is the current state, if I was able to answer your question. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Channa, I'll come to you now. You spoke about the real-time payments to different stakeholders in the ecosystem. I want to address these concerns about the security. Like, as Lanka Pay, because you handle all the account-to-account transactions, how do you address the security and scalability of real-time payments as of now? And do you have any future plans to kind of make sure that these transactions are secure?
Yeah, I think the main area that we looked at in terms of security, especially if you follow international standards in security, those cover a wide spectrum of areas. Now, for example, for payments, there's Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, right? So which basically on one side covers the network security, the application security, but in addition, it also covers people security and physical security as well. Right? So in terms of CCTV monitoring, to police report on people. So it's basically changing of culture to look at things more securely. It's not only just providing the secure data and providing security data, but also looking after the weakest link, which is the people, right? So because that is where the break-ins happen. I'll come back to the second part on scalability. One of the actually, but the thing is, the challenges are keep on mounting. I mean, we obtained PCI DSS certification, which is the worldwide international standard for data security in 2017. So continuously we have been having that. But recently, one of our engineers, software engineers, he actually wanted to buy a lawnmower.
Right.
And so he went to search on Google and found that this particular site had offered 3,000 rupees less than the market.
Right.
So he actually wanted to buy this, and then he clicked, and then it asked him to download an app. So he downloaded the app and ordered this and got the discount and got the loan. Very happy.
Fantastic.
A month passed by, he got his salary into his account. Then he actually logged in and did a bill transfer. Within 5 minutes, account was wiped out. Right?
I see.
He couldn't figure out what happened. He didn't do anything wrong, right? I mean, to see that, apparently when he bought that, he has actually downloaded the malware, and malware was sitting in his phone for a month until the money came to his bank account, and he did a bill transfer, captured his login, username, OTP, and clean the account, right? So that's the danger. But the problem doesn't, then that kept us thinking now, so that's only one side of the problem. Now the same engineer has access to our data center, right? So we have given him authorization through retinal scan, biometric to go into the data center. So he clears all that, he walks into the data center, what walks with him? His smartphone, where remotely people have access to the camera. They can on the camera, off the camera, switch off the phone, dim the phone, take full control. So what means he has a smartphone which the camera accessible to a remote fraudster, entire data center is visible. So these are mounting challenges that we are, so we think we are fully secure, but then different challenges are coming in back through the back door, which we are not even thought of, right? And if this didn't happen, we wouldn't have even thought. So we are now even thinking, should we allow people to take smartphones into the data center, because smartphones are not cleared. I mean, smartphones are cleared to access the network, but not through the camera to see what's going on, people entering passwords, accessing to the servers, right, in data centers physically. So these are the mounting amount of challenges that everybody is facing, and fraudsters try to be one step ahead of us. So the bad side about that is we have to safeguard, and we have to succeed 100% of the time to safeguard, but the fraudsters have to succeed once.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that we discussed during the National IT conference that we had a couple of days back as well. I mean, if you all take out your phones and see when did you last, how many updates that's pending in your phone, or how many unwanted mobile apps are available on your phone, you yourself would be amazed sometimes, right? So talking about the cybersecurity, I again want to go to Roshan to talk about the security on the ports side. Now, as Chan explained, there are very smarter way of fraudsters accessing certain systems. So, in your opinion, with this increasing digitalized cyber threats, evolving cyber threats, how do you think the ports authority should handle this, and the other stakeholders should handle this?
So, Basanthan, I think with your background, you'll be able to answer this question better than me, but I'll have a go at it. I think one of the challenges we're going to have is that, with everything being digitized, not only just on the payment side or on your back office, but even from a physical infrastructure, everything is getting online now. So you're talking about IoT, you're talking about all these autonomous vehicles, all these things. So basically what essentially is happening is your threat surface is getting larger and larger by the day. So whereas in maybe 10 years ago, you had a smaller surface to manage, today you have 10 times the surface to manage. So that is becoming even more difficult. And I think even for ports, what we need to adapt is what we call basically a zero trust security model. Essentially what a zero trust security model means is that you don't trust any entity or any person that has access to your data. So you don't take anything for granted. You ensure that, or whether you kind of assess all your data inputs and outputs, and you kind of make sure that everything is managed. Because most of the time, what we see is what we try to defend, right? But what we don't see, we may not defend, right? I think, you were speaking about things like APTs, right? Today, last year we had huge attacks with ransomware, and I know a lot of the banks and some of the large corporates in Sri Lanka got hit by ransomware. Today, APTs can sit in your network for years, and it can even you can't detect the anomaly. That's the scary part about an AP, one of these in your network. So you need to bring in some of the AI tools, and also security is also an expense. So I'm sure even at a boardroom level discussion, the issue is how much can you really spend on security? What is the right balance? But the reality is, as you said, the damage it does, whether it's a reputation loss or whether it's actual loss to the business, is something you can't quantify till it happens. So that's why it's important to collaborate with even with good security service providers, building things like a SOC, maybe very expensive for a port operation, but there are plenty of SOC service providers. I mean, we do that as a service. This is in no way marketing our services, but these are things that the port authority in Sri Lanka should mandate for almost anyone who's part of the supply chain.
Yep.
Because like you said, if your supply chain gets affected, your entire, one person in the supply chain gets affected, your entire supply chain is affected.
Correct.
Right?
I think as Channa said, I think it's about, if you have a single point of failure and if one of your nodes or one of your individuals are vulnerable, then your whole system is at a risk. With that, actually, talking about single point of failures, I wanted to ask a two-part question from Abhijit. Now, you spoke about port community systems and giving a holistic view of multiple endpoints. Can all these technologies be integrated to a common layer or a common portal? That's my first part of the question. The second part of the question is that if that's the case, could that also be a opening for a single point of failure if there is any vulnerability in the ecosystem?
So before we go ahead, I just wanted to add from my previous question,
Yep.
from the previous question. So if you look at lean and heavy PCS, another example for that could be customs. Right. So for example, in India, customs does not trust anybody. All data has to go to them, or it has to be filed with the customs first.
Very unlike our customs.
Sorry?
Very unlike our customs.
No, so customs will always retain, it's a revenue function, so they have to trust their filings. And then the approvals come to the PCS, and then the ports start working, and the freight forwarders and the entire logistics, the ecosystem gets to work, whether it's IGM, EGM processing. In Saudi Arabia, where we are implementing the port community system, the customs is there, omnipresent, but all the filings have to be on the port community system.
Right.
So the IGMs and EGMs are filed using the port community system.
Right.
So now, unlike in India, I have to now create a module for this to happen and work with the PCS. So this is where the complexity in PCSs can be, introduced.
Right.
Now coming to your current question. The PCS by design, are not meant to bias a transaction. It's a neutral platform. What it says is if you have some data to share to the logistics ecosystem and data is of use to Channa, that the port the community system will make sure that that data reaches here or is available to whoever wants to consume
Intended
it.
to be, yeah.
So there's a roles and a rules-based responsibility matrix in the port community system security infrastructure. Having said that, because I do not have any bias on any transaction, neither do I introduce by trying to infer or trying to provide an alternate view or some analysis of that. I am taking your data as is and providing it there.
Yeah.
Again, by design, and this depends upon the executive sponsor's vision, you can store that data or you cannot store that data.
Right.
Again, I'm just a transmitter of that data. I'm an enabler of movement of that data.
Right.
So, when you start storing data, it could be for the life of the transaction, or it could be for a certain period. That is when some of these complexities around security will pop up. But primarily, data is transmitted.
Right.
So if one has to look at security, it would have been more for data in motion,
Right.
not data at rest. Data at rest will come if I start storing data.
Right.
So even the messages that come, I will parse them into fields and I will offer it as a view on my web page. I don't infer, I don't tamper with it in any form.
Yeah.
That's where the neutrality, otherwise the trade will not believe me.
Yeah. No, so that's a good answer. I think one aspect of addressing cyber threat is by getting system-based solutions, but I think we can't ever avoid the human errors, right? And especially from the people, those who are sleeping right now, if I ask a question, like, what is the best way to get somebody's password? I mean, there
Are you confident they're sleeping, or are you asking them they're sleeping?
if at all, if they're sleeping. We see a couple of people sleeping, it's okay. If I ask you a question, like, what is the best way to get somebody's password? Do we have an answer? Anybody who can answer? Like, if I'm to get somebody's password, general answer is, or rather, common answer is, just ask the password. And typically people fall into this. And you can't avoid, no matter how much of a secure infrastructure that you have, you can't avoid these kind of failures at all. So with that, I'll slightly deviate from the system perspective, from the system perspective to policy perspective. So I'll go back to Channa. Channa, for us to compete as a country, Sri Lanka, in the global supply chain management and this competitive era, on the payment side and the otherwise, do we have sufficient legal framework in Sri Lanka at the moment supporting these improvements?
I think our legal framework has been pretty sound, and it has been developed over the years. So we have actually 3 areas that covers. For example, we have the Payments and Settlement Systems Act to cover the payment side, which is basically parked under the central bank. Then we also have the Electronic Transactions Act, which basically gives, which is an enabler for technology to be used for transactions. I'll come to that. And third, we also have the Data Protection Act, where Abhijit was saying data is being shared. How can somebody use that data? For example, how many of us got SMSs asking for people to vote? How did they get our mobile number, and who gave them authorization for ask for us to vote, right? We never gave, for that purpose, we never gave our mobile number to anybody, right? So coming back to payments, so the Payments and System Settlements Act is fairly robust. It's sort of evolved over a period, and basically it provides the rules, regulations, and other things, how payments could be handled. I think moreover, if everything goes well, you don't need rules. But the day something doesn't go right is where you need the rules, the laws, the regulations, right? So I think that's where some of these acts and some of the legislation comes into place. Then when I come to Electronic Transactions Act, acts are very clear. For example, when I take a digital signature or electronic documents, it's acceptable in a court of law. It's in black and white. But the problem for us is the lawyers. They try to interpret in 10 different ways, right? And for example, I think Sean knows, and the rest of the team knows, the difficulty in trying to implement digital signature in customs. Some of the people in customs actually didn't even want to take the act. The people who developed the act, enacted the act, their word. So they said, we have to also go to Supreme Court. We also have to go to Attorney General to get clearance. Even after they get Attorney General's clear, they said they have to go to Supreme Court.
Right.
So the battle that we had to get them to enable to use was significant. But electronic transaction, which was enacted originally in 2006 and then amended in 2017, it's very crystal clear if you see that. And if you see that, it's very clear that there is no ambiguity. But people, especially the legal people, tried to create ambiguity for different reasons, to interpret in a different way, so that we can't make efficient systems. Last but not least, I want to come to data protection.
Right.
Fundamental misunderstanding of people about Data Protection Act, it's trying to control. That's what a lot of people, what do we do? Actually, the Data Protection Act was put in to facilitate technology to be used.
Enable.
It's an enabler rather than blocker.
Net positive enablement.
It's a positive enabler. But what it does is, once you access data, once you get data, right, from somebody, without, so the first of all, who is the owner of that data? It's the individual. I own my data. It's not my government or the military or the police. I own my data.
Correct.
So if I share my data with somebody, if they want to do something other than for the purpose that I use that data, give that data, they have to get my consent, which is the basic principle of sharing this data, right? Because if they use it without my consent for a purpose, we know how U.S. elections were also changed by sharing Facebook data with other countries, right? So classic example. There was this U.S. recent elections. So there was this professor who predicted 8 times in a row using a 13-point model who is going to win, right? Every time correct. This time he predicted Joe Biden is going to win previously, then changed it to Kamala Harris is going to win. So he stood by that, and then after the election, his prediction went wrong. So I was watching a video of his what went wrong, right? So he basically said one critical aspect, Elon Musk. He bought Twitter, now it's called X, and carried out a massive, he called it misinformation campaign, which basically impacted his 13 points, right? So that, I mean, I don't know whether that's true or not, but that his argument was that actually resulted in failure. So what I'm saying is the Data Protection Act is to protect people's data being used for a different purpose than what it's shared for.
What customers share.
But however, if the customer wants to share data to access, for example, if I want to find out the best deal for me or whatever that uses my data, which benefits me, I can give my consent. But only for that specific purpose. If you misuse it, then Data Protection Authority can come in, put fines to, arrest you, or there are so many penalties that they can be put in, so that the organizations will not misuse people's data, which is given for a specific purpose.
Sure.
So I think all these precautions are there. The legislative cover is there. So it's not that we don't have legal cover. If people understand them properly and use it the way they are supposed to do, I think we'll go a long way.
Fantastic. Thank you, Channa. With that, I'll probably throw a quick question to both of you, Roshan and Abhijit. I want to kind of navigate to modern technologies now. Maybe in ports or port operation, how do you think IoT is in the smart ports, the IoTs and AI, even though Abhijit doesn't like that much. How do you think that it will shape up? Very briefly, Roshan.
So I'll start with AI. Obviously, I think AI is a buzzword. Everybody wants to do something with AI or another. I mean, this is like 10 years ago, we had nanotechnology, and everybody wanted to do something with nano, and suddenly, now, no one's talking about nano anymore. Now it's AI. But the reality is, AI is, I also feel, is still in its infancy. I mean, I think we were discussing this a couple of weeks ago at the AI Summit also. One of the challenges that we have, you kind of build a solution on AI, and you try to deploy it. It takes 6 months. And then when it comes to deploying it in 6 months, the technology has evolved.
Yep.
And then you're behind that technology. So there's a lot of challenges in kind of implementing AI because of the current infancy. But there's still a lot of use cases for AI, especially in ports. I think you touched on some of them. I mean, today we have autonomous ports that run, hybrid autonomous ports, whether you're using autonomous vehicles, whether you're using AI to track people through vision technology, whether it's, there is so much of use cases for AI that is already developed that can be used at ports.
Right.
And even IoT. One of the challenges that I find in Sri Lanka with IoT is because we still have legacy systems that is built into our ports. And it's the
backend systems.
Backend system. So, but still, the good news is there is today we do that with some of our smart factory solutions. The factories have the same problem, but there is enough and more technology out there where even with its PLCs, we can still read it and bring into an IP network. And the reality is there is a lot of data that's there in that's being that's in ports.
Right.
So we can actually take that data and use it for predictive maintenance. So much of things that we can do, but the good thing is there is also always a solution.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Talking about the modern technologies, I'll probably throw a quick question your way. Blockchain is a huge technology that we use today, tamper-proof, and it's used way beyond cryptocurrencies and multiple other commonly known use cases. Like port automation and maritime logistics, how do you think blockchain can play a role? talking about the modern technology.
Okay. Just on AI, I know the buzzer went off,
Yep.
so real quick. On the AI part, I think a certain element of AI is already in play. If you look at, so for video analytics, for example, you walk into the room, people recognize you because of your facial features and all those kind of things. So a part of it is already there. So when I think, I look at it in two ways, identification and inference. So you identify something and then you infer. So the AI machines and the MLs, the machine learning,
Yep.
they come on your inference side of what do you want to make of it, because that is now going to cause an action.
Yeah.
So this is how I break it.
Yeah.
The problem with AI many times is the data you feed it and the models you create. So once you create those models, you could also typically introduce bias, which is where I think things start going a little wrong. Hence my point
Opinion.
about AI. To address on blockchain, yes, blockchain has a certain utility. Again, like other technologies, this is not a utility where it can be used anywhere and everywhere, because again, the compute is high. It is not as easy to operate.
Yeah.
But titular documents, wherever there are titular documents, let's say an electronic bill of lading,
Yeah.
for example, there are areas of customs where you file it with customs. A blockchain can actually help you go from where the shipment originated to where it has now come. So that traceability comes because of the blockchain. So there are only these certain kind of use cases where blockchain could be utilized.
Right.
And these can be brought into the port community systems of the national logistics portals, because there are many, they are all API based.
Yeah.
So they are open architectures. You can integrate with any system.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So with that, we come to an end of the session. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I would like to thank Abhijit Desai and Channa De Silva and Roshan De Silva for participating in this session. It's been wonderful. You didn't fall asleep, so thank you very much for listening to us as well.